welcome to Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus, where we have breaking news right off the top of the show for you today on November 6th. This Thursday, we officially have a verdict in the case of Abby Zwerner versus Newport News Public Schools. It's a case we've been following closely for 2 weeks and a story we've been following closely for much longer than that. The jury ruling in favor of the plaintiff for $10 million. So the jury, once again, ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Abby Zwerner, for a judgment of $10 million. Abby Zwerner was suing Newport News Public Schools for $40 million. The judgment, a quarter of that, $10 million. But the ruling is in favor of Abby Zwerner in the civil case against Newport News Public Schools. Now, Abby Zwerner's legal team speaking to the media just minutes ago, right before we came on air. We're going to play you that press conference in its entirety. After that press conference, we are going to go live to the scene where we are going to hear from reporter Emily Harrison, who has been in the courtroom all morning. So let's listen to Abby Zwerner's legal team, and then we'll get back here in Live Impact News and make our way out to the scene and hear from Emily Harrison.
So we would just like to share that this has been a good week for Abby to get to finally speak for the first time and be heard. So we're very happy with the fact that Abby's story got to be told. I remember just 3 years ago, almost to this date, hearing for the first time Abby's story and thinking that this could have been prevented. So now to hear from a jury of her peers that they agree that this tragedy could have been prevented. So we're very happy with the outcome for today, and we're happy that Abby's story got to be told.
What's the next step legally for the case? Are there post-trial motions scheduled? And then, of course, an appeal would be expected.
Yes, we'll be coming back for post-trial motions. We'll set that date sometime soon.
Teachers across the nation have been watching this trial unfold. What kind of message do you think this sends to them?
Well, I think it says that what happened at Rich Neck Elementary School that day was wrong and is not going to be tolerated. That safety has to be the first concern at schools. I think it's a great message.
What do you make about the larger deal here where somebody's being found liable that was not involved in the actual shooting itself here?
Yeah, ultimately, I think we have to acknowledge that there are multiple... Closer to the mic. I think we have to acknowledge within our civil justice system that accountability comes from anyone who contributed to the ultimate outcome. And some of these things are foreseeable, and if we can take the appropriate measures to prevent them, then we can save lives, and we can save lives from being harmed detrimentally forever. And so ultimately, it's for the jury to decide what's right. They decided what's right, and we're grateful for their time and their attention these last 2 weeks.
Is there any clarity on payment of the judgment? I know there was some questions surrounding this Virginia Risk Sharing Association, potentially terms impacted by any guilty finding of that. And the criminal case set for trial November 17th. Is there any clarity at this point as to who will pay the judgment?
Let me say this, that there are post-trial motions, obviously, that are still pending. There is an insurance policy that's covered for the school board, and the defendant, Parker, is a named insured. You know, the teachers, and the one comment that I wanted to make about the teachers in America, because I think it's important to say, the comments that we received in my office, Diane's office, and Kevin's, overwhelmingly were teachers concerned about their safety in schools. And if this doesn't send a message to the schools of America that teacher safety and children's safety from weapons is too important to make it a second thought. It needs to be the most important thing that schools do, taking care of the teachers and safety of our students. And if that means metal detectors, if that means something else, we can't let these kinds of school shootings, whether it's an individual case like this or the mass shootings that have destroyed America. School safety, teacher safety, children's safety is the most important thing. This verdict reminds people that you will be held accountable if you don't make that your first concern. So we're pleased with the jury understanding that.
How is Abby feeling about the size of the verdict?
Abby's pleased with the verdict, and we obviously need to make sure that when we address it post-trial motions, we'll see what the judge does or doesn't do. So we'd rather not talk about the amount. It's not important today, as in fact the justice part of this is. The money obviously means that this jury knew it was a serious injury to her.
How is she feeling about the verdict itself? The fact that it's not the money, but the fact that they cited.
She's smiling, her mother's smiling, and her sister's crying. I think that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, Abby's been waiting for a long time to be able to share her story, and so this is a good thing. It's been great that she's been able to share her story and have that closure.
Last one for you, Mr. Bright. I think you might know this. Is there any other previous gavel-to-gavel trial broadcast in the region's history, Hampton Roads or what have you?
You say that because I have gray hair. I do not believe that there has been a court TV or gavel to gavel. There has been plenty of TV coverages on some very significant criminal cases, but this would be the very first civil case that's been televised that I know of in our region.
You finished one historic case and you guys are about to go into another one. Do you guys feel prepared for the next one?
Kevin Biniazin's always prepared. I'm going to go surfing.
Definitely be prepared.
Any other questions?
All right.
We'll be back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the legal team for Abby Zwerner speaking there in front of the courthouse after a long trial, and obviously some relief from the legal team, and they indicated that there was happiness and relief from Abby Zwerner and her family as well. Now, we are going to go live. We have Emily Harrison with us from outside the courthouse. Emily, you've been covering this for weeks now. Can you just give us first thoughts, your initial reaction from yourself and from those in the courtroom, just anything notable that you saw or heard when this verdict was read?
Well, I think as we were waiting for this verdict to come down, essentially many people in that room were holding their breath from both sides. There was a sense of anxiety in that courtroom as the hours passed. This jury went in at roughly 9:15 to even start deliberating. And I think many people in that courtroom thought that it would be a little bit faster than what it was. But in the end, they came out just a few minutes ago and delivered that libel verdict for $10 million for Abby Zwerner. Zwerner's attorneys coming out here and saying that they are pleased with the outcome, even though it's only a quarter of what they originally asked for. They say that this money and this judgment is about sending a message saying that school violence and that school threats need to be treated seriously, and that if warnings are ever brought to an administrator, they need to be taken as a credible threat as soon as they are first heard. While Abby Zwerner did not go and give an interview for herself following this, she was standing just to the side of her attorneys, and you could see the visible emotion on her face as well as their family as they stood all around her, really supporting her in that moment as her attorneys were talking. And again, just saying that they're not disappointed by this outcome. Meanwhile, Dr. Ebony Parker, while I did not see her come out of the courtroom, she disappeared very quickly from this. Parker's family, as soon as the verdict came down, came together as one and exited the courtroom immediately. There was no comments given about that. The defense attorneys as well, we have also not seen, but I doubt that they are still here at the courthouse at this time.
Yeah, and so could you speak more to the tension in the courtroom? It's been an emotional trial. It's been a long trial. To hear you say that right off the top of how much tension there was, a nervous energy in the air, can you speak any more to that feeling? And is it something you've experienced before in covering these types of cases?
Yeah, well, you'll remember that the jury went in to deliberate yesterday. Granted, it was very late. I think they went in at about 3 or 2 o'clock p.m., so they only had roughly 2 hours to deliberate. But in that time, I would say certainly on Zwerner's side, there was an air of easy confidence, that thinking that they would come out with a verdict quite soon. That would have been very soon. That's not how this played out, and instead they were brought in and told the judge that they wanted to go home for the day. That was understandable, of course, and so they broke, and we came back this morning at 9:15. That same easy energy, I think, was found in the morning, but as the hours slowly but surely went by, you could feel almost the shift in that courtroom as Zwerner's side started getting a little bit more worried, and you could see a bit more smiles on Dr. Parker's side of the courtroom. Definitely an energy shift at the end, and then when that buzzer went off, every single person went running inside of the courtroom. There wasn't a seat to be had as so many people were anxiously waiting for the results of this verdict.
Yeah, and as we've gone through this trial over the last couple of weeks, I think we've been so focused on this specific incident. I mean, it happened in Hampton Roads, right in our viewing area. I think that all of us here have been so focused on that day at Rich Neck Elementary. But the question you asked the legal team, and a topic that they spent a lot of time discussing, is the bigger message that this sends. Has that been something that they've harped on throughout the trial, that this is a message to teachers all around America that your safety is paramount?
I think they're saying it more as it should be fact, that was their entire legal argument, is that administrators had a duty to protect not only their students but their employees in a school building. And they were really making that their entire argument for this gross negligence case. And that's what the jury was asked to essentially find in this, and find they did for $10 million, still a quarter of that. But I would say that was the bedrock of this the entire time, and that's exactly what they came out here just a few minutes ago to say, that the money was not necessarily the biggest question in this. They wanted to find Dr. Parker liable to send a message, not just here at Hampton Roads, but across the entire nation, as this is a case that has gripped the nation from the beginning, as a 6-year-old child brought a gun to school, and that the numerous warnings that were given to administrators that day.
And, lastly for me, there was a lot of talk about this wasn't just a trial, this was a chance for Abby Zwerner to share her story, a chance for her to tell her side. We know that there will be post-trial motions, but from your perspective, having covered this so closely, is this the end of a very specific chapter in this story?
Honestly, Connor, I would say it's not the end, not by a long shot. This family is gearing up to be back in this courtroom in just over a week, maybe 2, because you have to remember there is the criminal case with Dr. Ebony Parker. Yes, she has been found liable for this, but now she faces 8 counts for the children, for every bullet that was in that gun, and that loaded gun in that classroom. And so this family, I think they're breathing a sigh of relief today, but they'll be right back here again, as that will be also a historical trial right there. If Dr. Ebony Parker is found guilty in that case, because it's criminal, it will be the first time a school administrator is found partially criminally responsible for a school shooting, and that will be quite a statement across this country. So to answer your question, no, this is not the end.
So more to come with this story, more to come from Emily Harrison today, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on 13 News Now. Emily, we know how much work you have to do. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us here on Live Impact News. We always appreciate it. All right, so that is Emily Harrison, everybody. She has been a rock star covering this case, and you can see more from her, again, on our linear station this afternoon on 13 News Now, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. We will have full coverage of this verdict, and as you heard there in that last answer, of what's to come in this story, something we have been covering since January 6th of 2023. And on November 6th of 2025, we get our first verdict. But there is another trial to come. There are post-trial motions to come in this particular case. And there is, we're sure, a lot more story to cover when it comes to Abby Zwerner and Newport News Public Schools. But for now, for Abby Zwerner's team, as you heard, it feels like a degree of justice for what she suffered on January 6th of 2023. We dove all the way into this right off the top because we had so much to go over. But we want to make sure that the foundation of this story is understood by everyone who's watching. We know that for the majority of you, this has been covered time and time again. But just in case we have new viewers or people who are new to this story, of course, Abby Zwerner, a teacher at Rich Neck Elementary School, shot in her own classroom by a 6-year-old on January 6th of 2023. She brought a $40 million civil suit against Newport News Public Schools and Assistant Principal Ebony Parker. And today, in that suit, the ruling was in favor of the plaintiff for $10 million. So that is currently the situation. And as we said, more to come. Nia Campbell, I saw you raising your hand there. Is there anything else that we need to cover in this situation?
Yes, we actually have that verdict being read. We have the raw recording if you want to play that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, Nia. And, we started things so fast here. I didn't get a chance to say, as we normally do, welcome to Live Impact News. Thank you for joining us today. The People's producer, Nia Campbell, is here. I am here to guide you through what is now an hour and 45 minutes of live news, and that continues with a live look, a look inside the pre-recorded reading of the verdict in that Abby Zwerner trial. Let's listen in now.
You may be seated. Thank you. Members of the jury, I understand that you have a verdict. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Will the foreperson please identify him or herself by number?
Foreman 37.
All right. If you can fold that piece of paper as you had it and hand that to my clerk. Madam Clerk, will you please read the verdict?
We, the jury, on the issues joined, find in favor of the plaintiff, Abigail Zwerner, and assess her damages at $10 million. The award interest beginning on June 1st, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any requests from the plaintiff? Any requests from the defense?
That we schedule time for post-trial motions.
All right.
And
All.
may not be heard on the verdict today.
All right. So the court will withhold entry of a judgment order in the case. The court will further reserve all rulings and hearings on post-trial motions for a later date to be set by the parties. Anything else to take up at this time, Mr. Beniozen? Ms. Douglas?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your term expires tomorrow, so you are still admonished by the court that because you still are in term, that you are not to talk about any of the cases that you've heard during this term, but you do not need to call back. Thank you very much for your service. It is an important service to all of us, and I know it has been a difficult service, but one that is necessary for the resolution of disputes in this country that I am very proud that we get to exercise those rights. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are excused.
Please rise to the jury.
All right, and there you can see the reading of the verdict and the reaction from Abby Zwerner there, a reaction from Ebony Parker. Again, this is a previously recorded look inside the courtroom from Court TV, where you just got to see the reactions of multiple parties involved as that verdict was read and in the close aftermath of that verdict. So we just wanted to make sure that we are covering all of our bases when it comes to this trial as we've gotten this verdict today. We're going to pull up video of Abby Zwerner after, as she was making her way out of the courtroom. She did not speak to reporters, but as she was leaving the courtroom, commiserating with family, hugging members of her family, talking to members of her legal team. We're going to pull that video up for you right now. There you see it on your screen right there. I want to read to you what the jury instructions were going into deliberations, okay? After weeks of hearing this case, their instructions were as follows. The issues in this case, the plaintiff had the burden of proof on two issues. Was defendant Ebony Parker grossly negligent, and was defendant Ebony Parker's gross negligence a proximate cause of plaintiff Abigail Zwerner's damages? So those two issues, the burden of proof was on the plaintiff being Abby Zwerner, and of course her legal team had the burden of proof in those two issues. When it comes to the defendant and the defendant's burden of proof, two issues. Was plaintiff Abigail Zwerner contributorily negligent, and was plaintiff Abigail Zwerner's contributory negligence a proximate cause of her damages? So the defendant And, of course, her legal team had the burden of proof when it came to those two issues. Lastly, one more issue. If plaintiff Abigail Zwerner is entitled to recover, what is the amount of her damages? On this issue, the plaintiff, Abigail Zwerner, and her legal team has the burden of proof. Okay? And so we now know that there was a ruling, there was a verdict that Abigail Zwerner was entitled to recover. Her civil suit was for $40 million. The damage that they ruled she was entitled to recover, the amount of her damages was $10 million. So Abby Zwerner, 10 of the $40 million, though the ruling was in favor of Abby Zwerner in this case. So a lot of different details to examine, a lot of things to dive into there. You'll get much more of that from Emily Harrison at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock today. Please tune in. And of course, anything else that you want to hear in terms of breaking news or further information, you can go to 13newsnow.com. We will be constantly updating this story on our website. So the story of the day, the story of the last couple weeks, and one of the biggest stories we've had in Hampton Roads over the last couple years comes to not a conclusion, as you heard Emily Harrison say, but another step towards a conclusion in this case for Abby Zwerner, Newport News Public Schools, and Ebony Parker. Okay. Now, we have other, of course, big news to get to today. There's plenty more going on. We started, that was as quick of a start to the show as we've had since we've been doing live Impact News. We dove right in, and that's one of the privileges of this platform, is that wherever we need to go and however quickly we need to go there, we can execute right here on live Impact News. But we also are in government shutdown day 37. Of course, that is now a couple days clear of the record for the longest government shutdown in the United States of America. Day 37 in the longest government shutdown that we have ever had here in America. And of course, we are still following the Louisville plane crash. Mayor Craig Greenberg gave a press conference today. We have recorded that press conference. We will listen in on that press conference. This was a UPS cargo plane that crashed shortly after takeoff. At least 12 people are dead, and officials warn that that number could rise. And the governor of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency. And of course, airports in general under heavy scrutiny right now as employees who are not getting paid due to that government shutdown working at the airport are drawing a lot of headlines in terms of what will be the availability of flights. Will there be delays? How will this impact travel throughout the country as certain airport employees who are also federal employees are not being paid due to the government shutdown? So we have a number of different things to get to. And I would say we have the press conference ready from the mayor of Louisville on this plane crash. If you've seen the footage of this plane crash, it is devastating and astounding to look at. Just after takeoff, this plane in Louisville crashing back down to earth. And again, 12 people are dead, and officials have warned that that number could rise. So why don't we listen in to the mayor of Louisville, and then we'll come back here into Live Impact News, and we will continue to go about our coverage of the other big headlines of the day, while, of course, monitoring any breaking news that may happen. For now, let's listen in Louisville, Kentucky, after this devastating plane crash.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Louisville Metro Hall. I'm going to first provide an update on some information regarding the UPS crash, and then we're going to be talking about some other items. Excuse me, one second. So yesterday and the night before, certainly has been a long 36 hours for our city. 36 hours of tragedy, 36 hours of heroism and hard work by our first responders, 36 hours of our city once again coming together and showing our strength in these challenging times. The updates are that as of right now, 12 individuals have been located who have died in the crash. Their bodies have been removed from the scene by the coroner, and they are currently working on identifying each of those 12 victims. The number of missing that we have tracked through our Family Assistance Center that LMPD has been operating since right after the crash is down to 9. I had previously reported that there were 15 individuals that had been reported as missing. We have located 6 of those individuals over the last 24 hours, and so we're now down to 9 that are missing. If you do the math, we may have located all of the victims. There may be more that have not yet been reported. And so I would ask if there are families that are still out there that are wondering about someone who may be missing, please call immediately. Please call 800-631-0604. That would be incredibly helpful information if there are still individuals who you have not heard from and you think may have been around the crash site. Our hope is that we have located all of the victims at this point, but again, we do not know. The search will continue. The teams will be out there searching through the debris now in what's called a delayering search in coordination with the NTSB and their investigation about the crash. There will also be individuals that will be looking underneath. There's so much debris there. There is so much charred, mangled metal that not all of the bodies may have been located until you look underneath certain things. And so that is going through the various layers of debris on the field. That will begin now. Everything to date has been just looking at what can be seen without moving debris. NTSB, as they reported yesterday, has identified and located the black box on the voice recorder, and that should be incredibly helpful, assisting with their investigation. And also Jody Myman, our Director of Emergency Management Services, he and members of his team are in close coordination and communication with the NTSB, staying up to date on their search and anything that we can do to assist them with their investigation and communications. We've talked a lot about first responders over the past few days and the amazing work that they did. I want to give a special shout out to one agency, and that is our Muhammad Ali Louisville International Airport Department of Public Safety. At the airport, you may or may not know, but there is a Department of Public Safety just for the airport, fire, EMS, and police, all in one department, led by Chief Josh Grimes. They responded immediately just because of their proximity on the airport. They were the very first responders on the scene that drove through the fences, past the airport boundaries, to immediately begin the first response to the crash and the immediate aftermath. They've had to deal with a lot since then, and I want to give a special thanks to all of the public safety professionals that work for our airport. Thank you all so much. Speaking of the airport, there are 2 runways that are now open at the airport. That is one more than yesterday. There's still one runway that the NTSB is still connected to their investigation. To answer a few other questions that we've been getting from members of the community, which are not yet full answers, but this is the best that we have at the time. I know there's still folks that don't have power for some of the businesses that are located near the crash site. LG&E is on site right now, and they are seeing what they can do to get power turned back on. The NTSB will be releasing buildings as they identify properties that they either have recovered the debris from or are not directly pertinent to the investigation. And it's safe that LG&E will be restoring power throughout this process. Yesterday, when I was out at the crash,
All right, back in the Live Impact News studio. Obviously, you can tell from the footage we were showing there, from the tone from the mayor, that this is a situation that still requires investigation, care, thoughts. I mean, Mayor Craig Greenberg saying that anyone who can still reach out to let them know of anyone who may be missing would be helpful. So clearly still 36 hours after that crash, still very much in the process of figuring out what happened and assessing the damage and hoping not to find much more damage out there in Louisville. And obviously the surrounding community still struggling with the impacts of that plane crash. Now, we cut off Mayor Greenberg in the middle of his press conference there. There was still about 20 minutes left in that presser. We may have time to get to that later in Live Impact News. But for now, we have a live look into the White House, into the Oval Office, where an announcement is being made today. Let's go live out to Washington, D.C. and listen in.
By Trump and Lily.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we solved the major problem together. It's now law. Today when I get mail, it's quite frequently from patients who are just having amazing success on our weight loss medications, but they too are finding it out of reach, particularly America's seniors in Medicare. So this spring in this very office, I met with the President and Secretary Kennedy, Administrator Oz, and others to figure out how to tackle this problem. And of course, unlocking obesity treatment is critical to chronic disease management. So is diet and exercise. But we wanted to open up that access for millions of Medicare beneficiaries and Medicaid as well. And again, the President saw this opportunity and we left the room and he asked us to solve it. So 7 months later, we're here. Medicare coverage with a $50 cost to patients per month. That's down from Medicare patients today, if they want access to our medicine, pay $500 a month out of pocket. Drug coverage is critical to health improvement. And we're not just treating the weight here, that's important. We're changing the course of chronic disease. Our medicine cut progression from pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes by 94% after 3 years in major studies. And many studies have shown the benefits that Dr. Oz spoke about with cardiovascular risk reduction. This agreement also accelerates approval of a new treatment that are easier to take and highly effective, like our once daily oral pill or Forglipron. And we have other treatments in development, and those will be included, along with other manufacturers' latest treatments when they become available. So as drug coverage expands, so does choice, and data shows that medicines work differently for different people. Some are better for some, weight loss and weight maintenance, and we really believe that doctors and patients should choose the best option. So it's important that this deal includes both of the leading innovators and manufacturers of this transformational new class of medicines. Medicare coverage is a milestone, but it's probably only the beginning. We call on states, on employers, on commercial insurers, even PBMs, to join and expand coverage at affordable prices for all Americans. And Lilly stands ready to partner across the healthcare system to make that happen. Just as we've achieved this partnership with Chris and Inma and John, who helped us from CMS to make this day possible. And we're anxious to get started with this. As early as April 1, this coverage can begin for our medicines and Novo's medicines. And I just want to say it's hard to overstate the impact of this day. It's really a turning point in the fight against chronic disease and a landmark achievement for President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, as well as, of course, our company. But most importantly, it empowers people to take control of their own health, to eat well, to exercise, of course, avoid harmful substances, and where appropriate, in consultation with your doctor, access affordable now obesity medications that are really a breakthrough. And we believe that when America is healthy, America is strong. And at Lilly, our goal is the same here, to invest in science, invest in our country, deliver breakthrough medicines, and reduce and then prevent chronic disease, all to make our country strong for generations to come. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And I'll introduce Mike, my colleague.
Thank you so much. And before is Tom Emmer, we have one of our great leaders here. Is he in the room? Yeah, where is he? Oh, hello, Tom. I was going to invite you up. How about Mrs. Emmer joining us, okay? The real boss.
Come on
the
up.
real boss.
Mrs. Emmer.
Come on up. Come on up. She's the real boss, right?
There she is.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President, Secretary Kennedy, Administrator Oz, FDA Commissioner, Dr. McCurry, and the whole team. I'd like to especially thank Chris Klump and Imna Hernandez for your hard work. I also like to thank my own team, Dave Moore and Karsten Knudsen, for their tenacity in getting us here today. It's an honor also to be with you, Dave. Dave and I compete on a daily basis, quite hard, I would say. But because of you and because of this process and the administration, we are standing here hand in hand as friends to have a common cause. And the cause is to really provide access to many millions of patients that yesterday did not have it. So I'm very happy to be here on this today, on today's pivotal moment. At Novo Nordisk, we believe that access to life-changing medicine should not be a privilege. It is a societal promise, and that promise today is becoming one step closer to a hope, to a reality, and we are very, very happy about it in our company. We are here because semaglutide is a unique molecule. Ozempic and Wegovy are unique medicines. I cannot remember any other time during at least my lifetime that another medicine has gotten as much attention and as much honor in the world scientific circle and has become a household name. It is very, very important that we're making this deal today. We're able to stand here with you, President, and your team to ensure broad, affordable access for all American patients, and that is truly exciting. It means not only providing hope, but also providing unique medicines to help Americans live healthier lives and longer lives. Novo Nordisk is proud to be an American success story. As a leader, in manufacturing, research, and creating a lot of jobs. Currently, we have already invested $24 billion over the last 10 years here, and these investments have created more than 10,000 jobs. And they have generated $21 billion of GDP just in 2024 alone. And today, as I'm standing here talking, cranes are up, as you would like to say, in North Carolina, because we're just expanding our North Carolina manufacturing site once again with $4 billion additional dollars. In some strange way, you could say, even though we have a Danish heritage, we have been more American and been here for a long time and proud American than many other companies that were born here. And we are very proud of that. In fact, we are proud to say that our approval of Wegovy pill will be the only GLP-1 that will be manufactured end-to-end here in America by Americans and for Americans. This agreement reflects a shared belief that the administration has provided a safe and effective, innovative medicines accessible to many patients. And because we know different patients have different needs, we are very excited to have our semaglutide 7.2 milligram, the higher dose, now, as we call it, Wegovy Plus, available as part of the receiving priority voucher. We stand here to ensure that all Americans who need Ozempic or Wegovy can access the affordable medication, so they don't need to go and get an unapproved compounded knockoffs version of it. Once again, I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude to you, Mr. President, and to the whole administration for making America great again and allowing affordable access to many millions of patients living with diabetes and obesity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else? Just say a couple of words, Marty, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This is an amazing day because people talk about different ways to finance the broken healthcare system. This is fixing the broken healthcare system by dealing with two root causes: the price of goods and services, something hardly anyone talks about, and the health of the population. So today the FDA is announcing, as part of its new National Priority Voucher Program, that both Lilly and Novo Nordisk will be receiving a voucher for a priority review, because they're doing something in this administration's national priority interest, lowering the price of drugs to make them affordable, in line with the president's mission, and domestic manufacturing and addressing a public health need. These are two of 6 products that we are announcing today. Treatments for cancer that are unbelievable. They are incredibly promising. A rectal cancer treatment that has melted away tumors with no need for surgery or chemo or radiation. We're interested in therapies that reduce downstream healthcare utilization. They'll be getting a voucher for a review by the FDA in weeks instead of a year. So we're serious. We're doing everything.
All right, so there you heard from multiple members of the pharmaceutical industry as they are making an announcement at the Oval Office today. The summarization of that announcement: deals with pharmaceutical giants Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. You heard from representatives from both of those companies, the 2 speakers previous to this gentleman that took the podium right before we came back in studio. So Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, deals with the Trump administration that would lower the cost of GLP-1 drugs for many Americans, including those on Medicare. GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, the weight loss drugs that have become a major talking point in the pharmaceutical industry over the last few years. So that the announcement from the Oval Office today. Now, we don't know if Trump, it looks like Trump will speak during that press conference. We are recording that press conference. We can get to him later on if we have time in Live Impact News. But we wanted to come back into the studio because we have a very special guest, one of our most special guests here on Live Impact News. Alex Littlehales is in studio. He's been covering the Virginia election cycle thoroughly for quite some time, but especially this week. Alex, you spoke with former Governor Douglas Wilder. Can you just give us, first and foremost, just your impression from speaking with him? He is a legend in the state of Virginia and in the United States.
So the concept was we were in Richmond covering Spanberger's historic win on Tuesday. As we all know at this point, the first woman elected governor in Virginia. So no matter what, whoever won the elections Tuesday, it was going to be a historic night. But we now know that the person sliding into that moniker is Abigail Spanberger. So we thought, well, let's reach out to Doug Wilder, because he has a couple of firsts to his resume as well. The first black governor ever elected to a state here in the United States. So it also means he was the first black governor in the state of Virginia. So, does he have thoughts on sort of what someone in this position would be feeling from a standpoint of being first in something, right? So what are the challenges? What are sort of the things that they will navigate in their first, weeks, months, years under their administration? And because Doug Wilder is still very, very much in tune with politics right now, he is, they named a school, the Wilder School for, it's a governmental affairs school at VCU, and so it's named after him, right? Not only for his work as a state lawmaker, governor, but a former mayor of Richmond as well. So just someone who's been in politics for, half a century, essentially, right? Sort of, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but in some ways an American institution, right? Just someone who has been in and around politics and has many milestones under their belt. So just talking to him and just sort of his perspective on what he thought about not only the elections, but just Spanberger's path moving forward, being sort of this as Virginia reaches this new milestone.
And we talk about everything he has accomplished that former Governor Wilder has done in his career, but watching your interview, it seems like he's still very much involved. He spoke multiple times about how he'll give advice to this person, and he has a strong relationship with this person, House Speaker Don Scott, and even Winsome Earl Sears herself. He has spoken to a number of people who are still involved in Virginia politics. Yep. He's still very much in the game, giving advice where needed.
He is. He, served as the governor from 1990 to 1994. So there was, at that point in American politics, for him to be the first black governor of a state. He's also someone who grew up in a segregated neighborhood in Richmond. So I think that regardless of your party affiliation, he is someone that can be called upon and relied upon for just a perspective on public duty and public service, because you don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to appreciate the things that he's done professionally. I mean, even if you were to hate every single one of his actual policy decisions or the things that he did in his respective times in different offices, it's undeniable that the fact that he's about to be 95 years old, he has several high-profile jobs on his resume, and as you had mentioned, sort of an institution when it comes to just American politics overall. And he's someone that I think everyone, regardless of your party affiliation, can recognize. So, he talks about lending advice to Winsome Earle-Sears during her earlier campaigning days. He talks about, how he's had brief conversations with Abigail Spanberger in the past. And so I think that is a product of the fact that, if you have someone with so much institutional knowledge, why not tap on them as a resource of sorts.
Yeah. And what I gathered from him was that he was very resistant to label Virginia as a blue state, a red state, or even a purple state in some ways. He was hesitant to place any label on Virginia when it comes to party. That was something that he multiple times he said, it's not a red state, it's not a blue state.
Well, I think it's because right now you'll see it on social media that everyone is taking the elections on Tuesday. They're taking the avenue of, this was obviously something that the Democratic Party needed to stay afloat and keep pace with conservatives and Republicans right now. And so I think that there's a lot of conversation around looking at Virginia as, oh, well, look at the swing left in Virginia this election cycle. But I think he did bring up the idea that Virginia is not a blue or red state, and this is a people state, I think is sort of the quote, because we saw the exact same thing happen the opposite direction, a huge swing for Republicans in 2021. It's why Governor Glenn Youngkin is the current governor now, because there was such a pendulum swing against the then Biden administration. Now, you can make the argument that the swing left this year was much more drastic than the swing right 4 years ago. The numbers back that up, especially when you look at the fact that Spanberger defeated Sears by roughly 500,000 votes, a roughly 15% difference, whereas Youngkin's win over former Governor Terry McAuliffe was separated by about 60,000 votes statewide. So you're going from in the tens of thousands of votes to 500,000, right? So that is sort of the paradigm shift that we're looking at. But as you had mentioned, he made a point of saying that this is not indicative or reflective of this being a permanent status for Virginia, right? I mean, you still had, 1.3 million people vote for Winsome Earle-Sears on Tuesday.
So. And a race that we called at 8 p.m. on election night. Now, to your point, in terms of the Democratic Party gaining a degree of control during this pendulum swing, he did mention how they can capitalize on this moment. I pulled a soundbite from Governor Wilder where he talks a little bit about what Democrats can do over the next few years while they are in power to try to make some progress and establish themselves as kind of a governing force. And if we could play that soundbite now for Alex and the room here.
With the number of seats that they'll pick up, Democrats would be in a position to show and determine why they should be continued in office for a period of time. The problem is getting the right candidates, getting the right people to offer. And I think that won't be difficult in terms of the numbers of people, but quality. And so if the Democrats go about continuing what they're doing in terms of saying that we want to involve all people, we don't not reach across the aisle, don't recognize that there's an aisle. And you talk with the House, you talk with the Senate, you talk with the cabinet heads, you talk with everybody. But more importantly, stay in touch with the people on a regular basis, or on a reporting basis. This is where we are, this is what we're doing, and this is what we want to do.
All right, so stay in touch with the people, pick the right candidates. Words from Douglas Wilder, and what a great interview watching that entire thing. You can hear from Alex today at 4, 5, and 6 p.m. on 13 News Now. Now, Alex, you were also at Abigail Spanberger's campaign event. I'm wondering if you could just give us reaction to what that was like, how it was in the room on election night.
It was interesting because I would say that I'll just be frank. If we're just looking at polls, I think a lot of people in that room knew that Spanberger was going to be elected. I mean, nothing's 100%, but I think that the energy in that room that night was one that could be characterized of people had already emotionally invested in the idea that she was going to win. I think what was surprising, though, for everyone in the room, including the media, the reporters, dozens of media outlets there, including national media, not just us here, but CNN, ABC, Fox. I mean, they were all there, right? And I think what was surprising to even us and the room was the fact, as you had just mentioned, the race was called an hour after polls closed. So that means that, okay, so if the polls close at 7 o'clock, you're sort of maybe getting your earliest results in by 7:15, 7:20. And when those first numbers tallied, dropped, and were then being reported on television networks that were being broadcast in the Spanberger camp, it's 7:30, and Spanberger already has an extremely commanding lead, up tens of, just within a couple of localities dropping their vote totals up a considerable amount, right? And so I think that what you saw early on is that there was obviously a lot of excitement, but I think that excitement was sort of expected because of the fact that a lot of people, based on polling and just based on the idea that Democrats would perform well under a Trump administration, that there weren't a lot of concerned citizens, so to say, or there weren't a lot of concerned voters in that building that night. But what I think everyone was watching was how quote unquote dominant could this election be for Democrats tonight. And what we found was something that was extremely dominant, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if we just look at the numbers, Spanberger outperformed Harris compared to the 2024 presidential election. So she outperformed in places like Northern Virginia. She was able to, swing blue-leaning areas more blue, and she was able to cut into deficits. For example, if you look at the way that the vote broke down, rural counties and red-leaning areas still went Winsome Sears, right? Mm-hmm. The issue, though, that it appears that campaign ran into is that Spanberger was able to shift the Democratic split, 10, 12, 15 points towards Democrats. Mm-hmm. So, yes, even though you had Winsome Earl Sears carrying the areas in which you would typically see Republicans carrying, Sears did not win by the margin that she needed to in order to compete against more Democratic-leaning urban areas like Richmond, Hampton Roads, and Northern Virginia
up
outside
by
of
D.C.
Yeah, so you basically, Sears needed to turn out, if she had a chance of being competitive in this race, Sears needed to turn out the base and the areas that she knew she was going to win. But she did not even do that to the level that was needed because, as I just alluded to, Spanberger was able to outperform Harris, despite losing those localities still, outperforming Harris and cutting into Republican leads, even though there were obviously localities and cities and counties that still went Sears' way. They weren't in dominant fashion. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you see that now that the vote tallies are essentially done being counted, you have 500,000 votes that went plus Spanberger over Sears.
Yep. Yep, and that all of that together, dominating in the areas that Spanberger, you would think she would dominate, and then the margin being closer than you would think out in that Southwest Virginia region and elsewhere in those conservative strongholds. All of that led to a landslide victory for Abigail Spanberger and the entire Democratic ticket. Okay, Alex, we have taken up too much of your time already.
No, never.
I know how much work you have to do today. I know you've got some chicken broccoli and rice to eat. So
why you gotta put that? That's off the screen.
That's the best. So. Listen, that's the most admirable lunch in the game. Okay, you got to be proud of that. And now, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you later on. Great job on election night.
The full interview with Governor Doug Wilder should be on the 13 News Now Plus app at some point. If not now, then very soon.
I would highly encourage anyone interested in politics to go and watch that interview in full. Former Governor Douglas Wilder, a legend here in Virginia, and really a political institution, as Alex said. Alex, quick on your way to being a political institution yourself. Great work this entire election cycle, and we'll see you next time that we get graced with your presence here in the studio.
Well, there's an election every year in Virginia.
That's right.
So
we'll see you in a year.
Long. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Alex Little hails everybody. And again, that election was huge news for such a long time. Now we move on to governance, right? 2 more months in the Youngkin administration, then the transition happens to Abigail Spanberger, and then the Democratic Party with a lot of power now, both in terms of who are in those primary seats and who sits in the House of Delegates, and we will see what's to come with the Democratic side having such a majority in so many aspects of Virginia's state government. Now, Donald Trump is now speaking at the White House. We were out at the White House for that announcement from multiple pharmaceutical giants and a new deal that they have made with the Trump administration to make GLP-1 drugs more affordable. And we heard from representatives from Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, those pharmaceutical corporations. Now we will hear from President Donald Trump himself. Let's go live out to the White House and listen in.
The only thing is they go out and they take commercials how under the Democrats you have affordability. It's just the opposite. We have much lower prices than they do. And we only have one thing, beef, because the cattle ranches are doing well. We're going to bring the beef prices down, and they understand that, even if we have to help them out. But the beef also is not a big difference, but every price is down. The biggest price is energy. We're at almost $2 for gasoline, and you take a look at where they were at $4.50, $5 for gasoline. And when gasoline and energy comes down, everything else follows. And I was so happy. Last night I made a speech, and then I get off the stage. I said, I feel like going up and saying it, because I have a lot of respect for Walmart. And nobody's influencing Walmart. They came out and they said, Trump's Thanksgiving dinner, same things, is 25% less than Biden's. And we are the affordability one. We are the ones that have done a great job in affordability, not the Democrats. And yet, we just lost a couple of elections that were very Democrat areas. Maybe won't be full. They weren't very Democrat when I ran a year ago because I did well in those areas. But we just lost an election, they said, based on affordability. It's a con job by the Democrats. The Democrats are only good at con and cheating on elections. Thank you for the question.
Novo Nordisk is in the middle. Question about India.
Say it.
How is the talks with Prime Minister Modi going on a trade deal? And when do
going good. He stopped buying oil from Russia.
When do you plan?
And he's a friend of mine, and we speak, and he wants me to go there, and we'll figure that out. I'll go. I had a great trip there with Prime Minister Modi. He's a great man. And I'll be going.
Novo Nordisk is in the middle of a 10. You're planning to go to India next year, sir?
It could be, yeah.
Novo Nordisk is in the middle of a potential $10 billion acquisition for a smaller obesity biotech. They might need your and the FTC's help to see that through. Do you have any issues with that, or Eli Lilly buying a smaller obesity biotech from an anti-competitive
Well, I don't know. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, I'd like to hear it. Maybe you should give us a piece of the company, like I've been asking for.
So I
give the United States a nice big chunk of the company.
So Novo Nordisk and Pfizer right now are in the middle of an acquisition dialogue and discussion.
It's you and Pfizer?
It's us and Pfizer.
Competing for the company?
Competing for the company.
Who's winning?
And as of today, our bid is higher. And our message to Pfizer is that if they would like to buy the company, then put your hand in the pocket and bid higher. It's a free market. And at the end of it, it has to do with basically the price that the seller is selling for their shareholders and the buyers willing to pay for it. This has nothing to do with FTC, has nothing to do with anything else.
Do you think it's
Is that a
anti-competitive
similar
because
product to what we're talking about today?
It's a product, it's a series of products that will come to the market in around turn of the decade, where the market is very crowded with many, many other players as well.
Right.
So it's the next generations of products, and it will come five. Yeah.
Mr. President,
Zoran Mandami, you said that, you called him a communist. You said that if he won, you would take drastic action against New York City. What kind of actions are you looking at, and will the ICE deportations continue?
Well, I think you have to look. If he is a communist, there's not going to be a lot of activity. So you wouldn't need bridges and tunnels and all the different things that were being planned for New York, I think. And look, I hope New York does well. That's all I can say. I love New York. I grew up in New York. I did well in New York, always did well. And I hope New York does well. That's all.
And the ICE raids, will they continue?
ICE raids? Well, you want to get criminals out. If they're criminals, we want to get them out. Ideally, we wouldn't have to do them because he'll send the criminals out himself. But that seems to be unlikely. No, we have to get criminals out. Millions of people were let into our country from prisons and from mental institutions and drug dealers, a lot of drug dealers and murderers, 11,888 murderers. 50% of them committed more than one murder. And we want to get them out. So whether they're in New York or anywhere else, we want to get them out. We've created a great place in Washington. All of you see the difference between what it was now and what it was a year ago under Biden. It was a death trap, and now it's people walk down the street, they have dinner, the restaurants are booming. Washington, D.C. is great. I will tell you, Memphis is doing really well too. You're hearing those reports. It's companies were going to move out. They're not going to move out anymore. We've done a great job, and we've only been there for 4 weeks. So we've done a great job with that. But they have killers in New York. We want to get them out. If they have murderers, if they have people from jails that they allowed out of their jails in order to save a lot of money, we want them out of here. We want to put them back in their jails, not our jails.
Mr. President, quick question in regards to TSA. Would you ever consider privatizing TSA? That question comes to us from our viewers all the time, and I told them I would ask you.
I think of privatizing a lot of things, but generally speaking, you have government, and a lot of people don't like privatizing, but some things that they really do, they work out better privatized. But it is government, and sometimes government can be better. It's something a lot of people talk about.
I've heard that government, as far as air traffic controllers, is 2 thumbs up on that. I've heard from dozens of pilots who have flown the last 90 days, particularly under all the stress of the government shutdown.
Right.
They tell me, Brian, that is the one thing the government does right is air traffic controls.
Well, we're going to do it a lot better too, because we're going to buy a new system. It's under bid right now. Bid about 4 different companies, all top of the line, like these 2 great companies, except in a slightly different field. And the air traffic control equipment is 45 years old. Buttigieg spent billions of dollars trying to fix it and didn't even use the right wire. You're hooking up glass into copper, and you can't do that. If they went to a reasonably good school, they'd find out you can't hook glass into copper. And they spent billions of dollars, and it was actually made the system much worse. We're going to get rid of the entire system, put a brand new system in. It'll be expensive, but we'll have the best air control system, meaning the control towers. They'll be stripped down to the bone, and brand new equipment is being installed. And we'll give out that. It's a big contract. We'll give out that contract over the next 6 weeks.
On drug pricing. Sir, that the FAA is going to have to cut about 10% of flights at the top 40 airports because of the government shutdown. Are you at all concerned that it might not be safe to fly right now? And what do you tell people who are gearing up for
Thanksgiving? No, that's why they're cutting. Yeah, it's a fair question. Sean Duffy announced they're cutting in certain areas 10%, and they want to make sure it's 100% safe. That's why they're doing it.
Mr. President, given these modifications that are being made to air travel, the other disruptions with the government shutdown, do you think it's time for Republicans in Congress to change their negotiating position at all?
In what way?
To start making concessions to Democrats?
Well, I think it's time for them to end the filibuster and just put everybody back to work. Vote in voter ID, vote in no mail-in voting except for military, far away military, and people that are very sick. I'd like to see one-day voting. I'd like to see not 65 days of voting from all over the place. No, I'd like to clean up the elections. The border, we've done a great job. We have a great, strong border now. But I'd like to see new rules on immigration that can be fair and good, you know. But rules that you'll never get, rules that they're never going to get. There's so many things we could put in, including tax cuts that we could get, and we could do it all ourselves. But to do that, you have to end the filibuster. The filibuster is, and they'll do it too. They'll immediately do it. You know, what they're going to do is, what the Democrats will do is they're going to make Puerto Rico a state. They're going to make D.C. a state. They're going to pack the court. They're going to end up with more electoral votes. They're going to end up with 4 senators because of the 2 states. And they're going to do this 100%. They would have done it, except Manchin and Sinema got in their way. They would have done it. So if they're going to do it, I would do it. I would do it before them.
And you think
that
the longer
Israel,
this,
a little like Israel. Israel attacked first. That attack was very, very powerful. I was very much in charge of that. When Israel attacked Iran first, that was a great day for Israel because that attack did more damage than the rest of them put together. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see voter ID. Who wouldn't approve voter ID? The Democrats. Why wouldn't they approve it? Because they cheat. There's only one reason not. We don't have voter identification, and we should have it. If we got rid of the filibuster, in one day you'd have voter identification. The only reason they don't want it is because they cheat.
Mr. President, tax credits. There are some people, Republicans, who would also like to see the ACA tax credits extended for middle-class folks who are buying insurance on their own. Right. Where do you weigh in on that?
Well, I don't weigh in it, but we're looking at all of that right now. We're looking at all of it. There are a lot of great ideas out there, including for health care, because Obamacare is a disaster. The Obamacare premium is going to go up 17 or 18%, and that's not my fault. I didn't want Obamacare. That's the fault of the people that put it in, the Democrats. And now they want it subsidized further. But you know, where you take it from them, you take it from a lot of other people. We could have much better health care at a much lower price.
Will you be doing another one of these drug pricing announcements with another company, or is this the last we're going to see for a little while? About drug pricing, deals that you're
everybody's involved, and we're going to get low pricing from. All companies are being involved. We are now going to have, with all drugs, the lowest price anywhere in the world. That's the price we're going to have.
And will you have
That's called favored nations. We were stupid nations before. We paid 10 times more, sometimes 15 times more, than they were paying in Europe and other places. So that was really stupid.
In 2 years, these will go down. The injectable prices will go down to $250, I believe. But American patients might still look at European prices and say these aren't quite low enough to match that. What would you say in response?
Well, then we're going to match it because as far as I'm concerned, we're at favored nations. If Europe is paying less, then now there could be other reasons. There could be a distribution, et cetera, et cetera. It's harder to get to, but outside of pretty minor things, this is favored nations. We are going to be paying the lowest price in the world, outside of some nations that are stone cold bankrupt, have no money, and people make contributions of medicines to those nations, including us. We're going to have the lowest prices anywhere in the world, and your drug prices will go down 600, 700, 800%, and I'll be given no.
All right, President Donald Trump in the Oval Office speaking about health care, speaking about some of the issues that Republicans and Democrats have told us are keeping them from reopening the government. But we cut out of that because a press conference has just started in Wake County, North Carolina. The Wake County Sheriff's Office, one of our live feeds, just took us straight into a press conference in Wake County. We want to listen in. We're not 100% sure what this is about. This is a live feed that just popped up. So let's listen in Wake County. This is in North Carolina, and let's see if we can figure out what's going on. We'll try to gather more information here in studio while we do so. We don't want to miss anything important happening in North Carolina so close to our viewing area.
custody in our evidence for 57 years. Just recently, the hair was provided and sent off for a suitable DNA comparison, and that was sent to Estrella Forensics. They were able to successfully develop a profile for the victim. The profile from this victim was sent to Leslie Kaufman with First Genes LLC, and she was able to identify a possible relative.
Okay, as you can see, something went wrong with that feed right there, that cutout. We will continue to monitor that feed. It also is telling us that Governor Stein is supposed to have a press conference in North Carolina today, and he'll be speaking about a different issue entirely. Governor Stein should be holding a press conference in Raleigh today. I believe it will be on Medicaid. Let's do live research here in studio. You see where Governor Stein will be holding his press conference there on your screen. And I want to give a brief update. Governor Stein will have a press conference on Medicaid funding, calling on the General Assembly to fund Medicaid. So that is something that we will go to live as soon as it begins. In the meantime, we wait, and we don't have to wait long. As you see on your screen, Governor Stein has just taken the podium. Let's go back live out to North Carolina.
Today, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Deb Sangvi and I are here to talk about the urgency of fully funding Medicaid. We're pleased to be joined by Dr. Karen Smith, a family physician who cares for patients receiving care through Medicaid, Betsy McMichael and Demi Eckhoff, who are both advocates for people with disability. I'm grateful to each of them for sharing their experiences with Medicaid with us today. But first, Secretary Sangvi, I'm going to turn it over to you, Secretary.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor Stein. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to the health and well-being of all of North Carolina. And thank you to everyone who is here today. North Carolina has worked for years to build a fiscally responsible, world-class Medicaid program that so many rely on for life-changing, in many cases, life-saving care. North Carolina Medicaid is innovative and provides affordable health coverage, access to doctors, prescriptions for more than 3 million individuals. These are children, older adults, people with disabilities, veterans, and working North Carolinians. These provider rate cuts are devastating to people, providers, and communities. Implementing these cuts is one of the hardest things I've had to do in my professional career, as a hospital executive, as a provider, and as a member of the North Carolina community. I know how important provider rates are to systems of care. As we have said many times, we did not make these cuts easily. This was an extremely difficult decision for us and a difficult decision for North Carolina Medicaid. However, without additional funding from the General Assembly, it was simply unavoidable. If we did not implement these changes, the financial strain on the Medicaid program would be even greater, potentially jeopardizing stability of the entire system and putting the state at significant fiscal risk. North Carolina would have run out of North Carolina Medicaid funds as early as next year. Here's the bottom line. North Carolina Medicaid is a critical driver in the health of North Carolina and makes people healthier. We know that. We have the data and evidence to prove it. We want to protect people's health and make it possible for everyone to get the care they need when and where they need it. No one should have to worry about services going away. We all agree that Medicaid needs to be fully funded. Let's come together and get it done. And now, pleased to introduce Dr. Karen Smith, someone who's living the reality of these cuts every day. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, Governor Stein, for allowing me to come and share some of our observations. I actually want to convey words of optimism. As a family physician of 33 years, one of the things that we've come to learn, optimism is sometimes all we have, and that's what we go by. But I'm encouraged because people have access to comprehensive, quality, coordinated care. And we know for the first time, a young mother who had good prenatal care, did everything she was asked to do, but found herself with an infant who had lifelong congenital problems. And to be able to sit with her and give her that encouragement to help her navigate through a system that clearly was going to be challenging. We also had the opportunity of working with a caregiver who kept repeating, thank you, for allowing my friend to actually live to the end of life with dignity because of those conversations that were held, the relationship that was established, and to be able to transition in peace and not give services that, quite frankly, he did not want. And what about the young man who showed up in our office on Monday with a constellation of symptoms? He couldn't figure it out. He didn't know what was going on, but he knew that he could go to a doctor's office in his community and then to come back 5:30 in the evening, well after the office had closed, to find out that he has a life-threatening problem and coordinate his care, get him to the emergency room. But here's the kicker. He came back in the following morning and said, "Hey, doc, I told him I don't want to stay at the hospital, but I need you to fix me up so I can go to work the next morning." Those are the stories that we share. This is enough to show the optimism that if we can make the right decision, people can continue to have access to their physicians, access to their health care providers. That's going to make a difference in their life. Now, medicine has moved forward. We have certainly brought forth advances in health care, but we're keeping people at front and center. And the only way they can do that, be with us, is to have that access. Well, I'm truly optimistic because I see people becoming healthier and happier every day, and they're thriving in ways that we've never seen before. Medicaid is a lifeline from the very beginning of life down to the end of life, and we look forward to the support to make sure that people can continue to thrive. I'd like to turn it over to Betsy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm here to tell you a success story, but one that feels increasingly fragile due to threats to Medicaid. I stand in a long line of mothers before me and among thousands now in North Carolina who are raising loved ones with serious conditions. Our daughter Janie is 33 and lives with an ultra-rare neurodegenerative condition called CAND. It comes with many challenges. But here's the beautiful part. She also lives in an apartment she rents in downtown Durham, in a neighborhood with people with and without disabilities who share life, neighbors helping neighbors. Janie rolls to coffee shops, to the YMCA to swim, and even to her polling place recently to vote. She has friends over and works as a consultant with a dance company. But here's the other reality. Her condition comes with a lot of medical issues. Thankfully, she's got a great primary care doctor, neuro-ophthalmologist, physical therapist, neurologist, urologist, geneticist. You get the picture. Medicaid is her health insurance, but it also literally keeps our daughter alive and living well in the community. But Medicaid is more than health insurance. It also provides her with the supports she needs to live her life as independently as possible through what's called the Innovations Waiver. For 9 hours a day, she gets the help she needs to cook, shower, dress, check her email, take her meds, get to appointments, and work, to name a few essential ways it helps. Now, you may hear that threats to her way of life don't include cuts to people like Janie, only to provider rates. But please understand that as those rates are cut, Janie will likely lose her staff workers as their wages drop, or providers are forced to close their doors. It's like saying, we're not closing schools, we're just cutting pay for teachers and principals and cafeteria workers. Without Medicaid health insurance and community support, home and community-based supports, now and especially next year when federal changes reduce assistance to North Carolina, Janie cannot live on her own, work, or enjoy her 30-something life. She would lose the independence she has worked so hard to get. I've worked for over 51 years and retired just a few months ago. As aging parents, we thought we had things in pretty good shape for the day that we're no longer here. But now, truly, it feels like a house of cards, ready to collapse. We each one, every one of us, have just one precious life. Janie's living hers the very best she possibly can, even with a really great sense of humor. No one lives in a vacuum. Everyone needs help with something. So I stand with Governor Stein and ask you and the lawmakers to be smart, to be kind, and then to be proud of making laws that make success stories like Janie's possible for her, her neighbors, and for thousands of families across North Carolina. Thank you. I turn it over to my friend Debbie.
Good afternoon. I am here today because North Carolina Medicaid is critical to my health, independence, and life. I don't want the cuts to Medicaid force me or anyone else into a hospital or a nursing home to get the supports they need. I was born with a rare form of congenital muscular dystrophy. I rely on a non-invasive ventilator throughout the day, as well as a feeding tube for all hydration and supplemental nutrition. I moved away from my family and all natural supports, but my life now is here in Durham, North Carolina. I am employed as a registered dietitian and serve patients with disabilities while also working on my doctoral degree in public health. I am able to pay taxes now, as well as be a productive and influential individual in my community. My direct support professionals, known as my DSTs, are my ramp to the world in my community. They assist me with all daily living activities, such as feeding, hygiene care, toileting, moving me into my wheelchair, driving me to various appointments, assisting me with my medical equipment, and much more. Most importantly, they help me be a productive citizen in my community. A 3% pay cut translates into potentially losing my direct support professionals, which threatens my independence. Ultimately, if non-Medicaid labor services have further cuts, I am at risk for going back into the hospital. In a hospital, I am unable to work and pay taxes or be able to work on my doctoral degree. Today, I am here representing the disability community at large. My DSTs are experiencing a 3% pay cut, which they can't afford. But other DSTs are getting an 8% cut, and many Medicaid services have gotten a 10% cut. I am also losing the type of personal supplies I need, and my doctors are getting cuts too. I don't know what this means if I will lose my doctors. Our disability community is fearful that these cuts will impact our basic needs in life. I urge you now to recognize this marginalized community and eliminate any further cuts. Thank you for your time and concerns.
Thanks. Demi, Karen, Betsy, thank you all for sharing your powerful stories. If we don't adequately fund Medicaid, there will be many people losing access to health care, particularly in the rural parts of our state. As both Ms. Eckhoff and Ms. McMichael shared, Medicaid can be the difference between independence and institutionalization for so many vulnerable patients. It can be the difference between care and no care for children, including those with autism, women about to give birth, older adults living in nursing homes, people with disabilities, and working North Carolinians. Our state's Medicaid program is in crisis, manufactured by our General Assembly, and people are suffering. Fortunately, because the General Assembly created this crisis, it can solve it as well. That's why I'm calling on the General Assembly to come back to Raleigh to do their jobs and fully fund North Carolina's Medicaid program. North Carolina is facing a health care crisis because the General Assembly has not adequately funded Medicaid, and our people are suffering as a result. DHHS warned the General Assembly for months about the impending Medicaid shortfall and said that without adequate funding, the department would be forced to cut reimbursement rates to healthcare providers, giving patients life-saving and life-enhancing care. DHHS and I urged the General Assembly to fill the breach, delaying the proposed cuts for the first 3 months of this fiscal year to give the General Assembly ample time and opportunity to make Medicaid whole. In September, each chamber passed a Medicaid funding bill. They agreed that Medicaid needed more money. They agreed on the amount of money, but they would not agree on a bill to send to my desk. As a result, the cuts to healthcare provider rates went into effect on October 1st. I then informed the legislature that DHHS could reverse these cuts if they would send me a bill funding Medicaid in their October session. The House sent the Senate a clean Medicaid funding bill, but the Senate rejected it because of an unrelated political dispute. By the way, I agree with the Senate on the substance of that political dispute, but it is absolutely wrong and frankly cruel to use sick and vulnerable people as a bargaining chip on an issue entirely unrelated to Medicaid funding. The members of the General Assembly have had 6 months to take action and solve this problem.
All right, so the feed has frozen from Governor Stein in North Carolina, but speaking extensively about Medicaid and getting a dose of perspective on the impacts that cuts to health care programs could have on people all throughout North Carolina and the United States. Now, we also have Virginia Senator Tim Kaine on the Senate floor right now. Let's listen in live as Senator Kaine speaks to Congress.
Particular statute allows this motion to be heard on the floor in a privileged status if two threshold questions are met. First, that there is no congressional authorization covering a proposed military action. And second, that military action is either ongoing or imminent, such that the motion should be heard. The framers in 1974 of this act clearly intended that Congress should be able to have a vote and debate on this matter even before the initiation of war, so that Congress could be in a position to stop it before it begins. And so what I am offering, Mr. President, together with my co-sponsors, Senators Schiff and Paul, is this resolution to try to make plain what the Constitution makes plain, and that is no war without Congress. We should not be in a war without Congress. I have had the opportunity, Mr. President, as have had some of my colleagues, to go into the classified facility here in the Senate and review the legal authorization document that the Trump administration has presented recently to the Senate concerning the military strikes against boats in the Caribbean and Pacific. Now, I reviewed that in the SCIF, so I can't talk about the content of it. I would encourage all of my colleagues to go review it, because I basically believe there are three critical errors in that. One, a mistaken philosophy of executive war powers that derives from a misquotation of constitutional era documents that the framers were using as they grappled with the war powers questions. Two, a domestic legal rationale for when the president can unilaterally wage war that is completely contrary to the Constitution. And three, an international legal rationale that I think most of the members of this body would find to be quite a stretch if they review it. But the one thing, Mr. President, I can say is something that isn't in the document, and so I'm not in any danger of revealing classified information. What's not in the document that is available for senators to review is any legal rationale that would suggest that United States military action against the sovereign nation of Venezuela or any sovereign nation is covered by the legal rationale in that document. And just this morning, there has been public press suggesting that even the president recognizes that there is no legal rationale for such military action, again, absent congressional authorization. Why are we bringing this to the floor, Mr. President? We're bringing it to the floor because of a set of actions we've already discussed in a resolution that was filed by my colleague, Senator Schiff, a couple weeks back, where we had a vote, the increased pace of military operations in the Caribbean and the Pacific near Venezuela. And the justification that the White House has used for those often references Venezuela. So there's an ongoing and increasing pace of strikes against boats that are killing dozens of individuals. But with respect to additional actions that are specifically focused on Venezuela, that enable this resolution to meet the imminence test under the War Powers Resolution, on October 15, 2025, President Trump confirms that he has authorized the CIA to conduct covert action in Venezuela. Now, it's highly unusual for a president to publicly announce that he's authorized covert action. It almost immediately makes it non-covert once the president has announced it. But that has been widely, publicly disseminated that the president has authorized covert action in Venezuela. The next day, October 16, the president says, we are certainly looking at land now, signifying a land invasion of Venezuela. On October 24, there were multiple public reports, and this is underway, that the Pentagon has sent the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to U.S. Southcom to be positioned in and around Venezuela. You don't need a Ford-class carrier to interdict small drug boats. That's not what you use a carrier for. That direction of the Ford, which includes many Virginians who are positioned on the Ford, to Southcom is specifically to have it there arrayed nearby Venezuela in the event the president decides to start a war there. And then finally, on October 31, public reporting showed that many Trump administration officials have told the press that a secret list of targets in Venezuela has been drawn up. All of this together with the increased pace of strikes in the Caribbean and the Pacific suggests that we are on the verge of something that should not happen without a debate and vote in Congress before the American people. This is an indication, Mr. President, of the current assets that are massed around Venezuela. The U.S. ships and aircraft massing off Venezuela, and this comes from a Washington Post report of November 1, 2025. The Gerald R. Ford, the largest and most modern aircraft carrier in the world, built at the Newport News shipyard in Virginia, is the lead, but the mass of other ships and submarines and special operations vehicles and aircraft platforms, both manned and unmanned, is significant. Currently, about 10% of the United States Navy is arrayed around Venezuela. They've been pulled from every other theater in the world to array around Venezuela. And this poses some significant risks to U.S. sailors. Venezuela has very high-end weaponry that they have acquired from U.S. adversaries, primarily Russia and Iran, that could do significant damage to these U.S. assets and to our sailors and troops that are on these assets. Particularly if Venezuela were to misread the impressions or the strategy of the United States, or there were to be some kind of a miscommunication, it would not at all be outside of historical precedent for Venezuela to use its own weapons if it believed it was subject to imminent attack, and that would pose the U.S. troops connected to these multiple platforms to significant danger. And that is what we should avoid. Mr. President, here is my belief. There may be members in this body who believe that we should be at war with Venezuela, just as there may be members in this body who believe we should be at war with narco-traffickers in the Caribbean and the Pacific. And there is a simple solution for that is consistent with the Constitution. And that solution is for U.S. senators to draft up an authorization for use of military force and have the backbone to put their own names on it if they believe a war is a good idea. But the framers of the Constitution firmly believed that we should not be at war. We should not be risking our troops who are on all these platforms right now, their life and their health. We should not be risking them without a debate and a vote in Congress. The framers took this position in such an unusual way in 1787. In all of the other countries around the world, the ones they were familiar with, the initiation of war was a matter for the executive. But the framers of the Constitution, as I've said before, even with George Washington as the president, a great military leader who they revered, they said a decision about war is too important to put in the hands of one person. And thus the initiation of war should be for the Article I legislative branch, not the Article II executive branch. And that has been consistent constitutional language that is very unique. Most nations still put the decisions about war in the hands of the executive, not the legislative branch. And I've been a stickler about this, whether the president has been a Democrat or Republican. Interestingly enough, Mr. President, this issue came up yesterday right across the street in the Supreme Court as the court was hearing oral arguments on the case of Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump, a case dealing with the question of whether tariffs could be imposed under the IEEPA statute that we've spent some time discussing on the floor. The Solicitor General of the United States, Attorney Sauer, is not only the nation's chief advocate before the Supreme Court, he was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. This is an individual who is very close to the president, both personally and now in the professional capacity. And he was making the argument that Congress had delegated a clear congressional power, the power to impose tariffs, the power to tax, to the executive. And one of the justices, Donald Trump's appointee, Justice Gorsuch, was pressing on the question of whether Congress really can delegate specific congressional powers to the executive or not. On page 68 of the transcript of the oral argument in that case, Justice Gorsuch was pressing this Solicitor General, Donald Trump's personal attorney. What's the reason to accept the notion that Congress can hand off the power to declare war to the president? And the Solicitor General said, well, we don't contend that. Again, that would be an abdication, not a delegation. I stand here, Mr. President, to urge my colleagues, and I've done this often during my 12 and a half years in the Senate, not to abdicate. Don't abdicate the power to declare war. Of all the powers given to the Article I branch, this is the one that should be most jealously guarded. The reason the framers put this decision in the hands of Congress was because of a belief that we should not risk the lives of our service members unless there is a clear political consensus, as expressed by a vote in Congress, that the mission is worth it. If Congress is not willing to have a debate and say that the mission is worth it, then it's the height of, I would sort of call it public immorality, to nevertheless require people who are serving to risk their lives and their health. Now, people who volunteer for the military volunteer knowing that it's going to be dangerous. They do sign up for that. But they ought to know if they are ordered into a mission that involves military action, that there's a political consensus by the elected leadership of the country that that mission is worth it. And absent a debate and vote in Congress, we are ordering people to potentially risk their lives without having the courage ourselves to sign our name to that mission. And so I stand here with my co-sponsors, Senator Schiff and Senator Paul, to say we shouldn't be at war without Congress. Even President Trump, by public reporting today, suggests that he may not yet think he has a legal rationale for a war against Venezuela. Let's not abdicate. Let's not abdicate the most important power that we have. I would hope that all my colleagues, whatever they think about the virtues or vices of a war against Venezuela, would at least stand strong for the proposition that Congress should have the power and indeed the responsibility to have a debate and have a vote on it before we order our troops to risk their lives. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Which one do you want?
Okay, so Senator Tim Kaine, former Governor Tim Kaine, talking at length in front of the Senate there about some of the situations that have been happening in Venezuela with attacks on Venezuelan ships or attacks on ships that may have been an overreach of power or that Tim Kaine says should be handled differently based on some of what he was talking about. No war without Congress. That was the headline of some of the visual aids that he was using during his speaking before Congress there. So one of Virginia's senators standing up and speaking about one of the major issues that's happening internationally right now. Now, one of the issues happening domestically that we've been talking about on a very consistent basis is SNAP benefits and what will happen to SNAP benefits. More importantly, what will happen to the people who need SNAP benefits to keep food on the table in the United States with federal funding for that program ceasing to exist in the wake of the government shutdown. As of November 1st, no more federal funding for SNAP benefits. How are people going to survive? There has been a back and forth discussion about where funding would come from, if the federal government has a duty to continue to fund that, how it's been handled in the event of past government shutdowns. Of course, Governor Glenn Youngkin in Virginia instituting a program using surplus funds in Virginia that would fund SNAP benefits for those in Virginia, for beneficiaries in the Commonwealth. So a lot of different stories coming out of this, a lot of different headlines, and a lot of people who need those benefits. Democratic lawmakers holding a panel earlier today to discuss SNAP benefits and SNAP benefit funding. Let's listen in on this pre-recorded video, and then we'll come back and meet in the studio and continue to explore some of today's headlines.
I'm honored for the opportunity to be here to talk a little bit about our work at the California DOJ, holding this president accountable when he breaks the law, which unfortunately has been frequent, it's been consistent, it's been blatant, and it has been brazen. I'll do a quick overview and then get into our SNAP work. We have sued the president and his administration 46 times in 41 weeks. We had no intention and we have no desire to sue him at all, certainly not once a week, but we sue him when he breaks the law. That's our position. If he breaks the law, we sue. If he doesn't break the law, we don't sue. And so he's broken the law more than once a week in ways that have hurt our states. And the Democratic attorneys general have banded together. We work as a coalition, 23 of us across the nation, holding this administration accountable when he tries to withhold $3 trillion worth of funding from our states that you, Congress, have already appropriated, when he tries to violate and trample over rights and freedoms like birthright citizenship, like the right to vote, when he tries to access the private sensitive information of your constituents, bank account information and Social Security information through DOJ, when he imposes unlawful tariffs that make costs higher for Americans instead of lower. We have also pushed back when National Guard has been unlawfully deployed to our cities, militarizing cities and providing civilian law enforcement on American soil. So there's, unfortunately, a tragically long list of violations of lawlessness. This is a president who is a repeat offender, who has violated the law multiple times. I want to tell you, we are winning our cases over 80% of the time. When a court issues an order, a temporary restraining order, a preliminary injunction, a permanent injunction, and more because we're advancing our cases downfield with the passage of time, we are winning final judgments in cases. And courts are finding that Trump has broken the law. They're issuing orders stopping and blocking the unlawful actions that are hurting Americans. And we're grateful for the opportunity to meet him in court to hold the line at the boundary of his authority and say, you cannot cross this line. You can do things lawfully, you can advance your agenda lawfully, but you may never advance your agenda unlawfully. And I also want you to know this, in all of our cases, he is following the court orders. There was one case where we had to move to enforce the court order, but the courts, their authority is alive and well, their orders are being followed, they're being complied with. Courts remain a place where you can go get justice and accountability and stop an unlawful president from hurting Americans with his unlawful actions. I do want to also mention this. Not one Republican attorney general has brought any lawsuit challenging the unlawful actions, the unconstitutional actions of this president. They have bent the knee. They have been craven. They have been cowardly. They have been supine. They have allowed the president to do what he wants when he wants, including ripping away funding from the people in their states, trampling over the rights and freedoms of the people in their states. They have stood by and done nothing. And they have also, that includes standing by while SNAP benefits get ripped away from the people in their states. And as you know, SNAP is an entitlement program. The statutory framework uses the word shall. The payments shall be made to any eligible American. And in the history of our country, SNAP has always been paid to those who are eligible, including in times of government shutdown, including the 2019 Trump government shutdown. It is a entitlement program that is obviously a safety net service. These are people who are disabled. They are veterans. They are seniors. They are children. They deserve their government to look out for them and stand up for them and make sure that when they're hungry, they are fed. That's who we are as a nation. Trump deliberately, by choice, intentionally, went out of his way to rip away over $5 billion of funding for over 41 million Americans who are hungry. They gaslighted the American people by saying, quote, the well is dry, when the contingency fund for SNAP that is supposed to be used in times like this, at times of a government shutdown, was full of $5 billion to $6 billion worth of funding. And they refused to pay benefits to hungry Americans until the Democratic attorneys general and others, there's a separate lawsuit as well, brought lawsuits that required him, the Trump administration and USDA, to make the payments. We had to go to court and get a court order that ordered the Trump administration, the USDA, to use those contingency funds. The court also allowed the Trump administration to determine if they were going to use other funds to pay all benefits, which would have been a very appropriate thing for the Trump administration to do, given that this is an entitlement benefit. They decided not to. They decided to only use the contingency funds and make partial payments to those who are eligible across the states. That's a problem. Why? Because it is an administrative nightmare. It creates a delay. People are already not getting their benefits since the beginning of this month. It will take multiple weeks for these partial payments to be processed, for EBT cards to be loaded, and for hungry Americans to be able to get the food that they need and they deserve. Trump could have either paid all of the benefits or had a clean approach to how to make partial payments, including just a straight across-the-board percentage, which could be processed and administratively applied more easily. So we're in a place where the Trump administration seems to be saying, I will starve hungry Americans until you allow me to rip away affordable health care from sick Americans. And he is treating hungry Americans, our most vulnerable, as political pawns in a very dangerous game. It's harmful, it's disgusting, it's dangerous, and we're not going to stand for it. So we've gone to court once again to hold this administration accountable. We will continue to be committed to upholding the rule of law, making sure we protect the health, safety of our of Americans. And I just want to say that as hungry Americans continue to be without the benefits that they deserve, we have a president who is more focused seemingly on his $300 million gold-plated ballroom, has been jet-setting overseas, and has not been attending to the needs of Americans. But the Democratic AGs and all of you are, they deserve leaders who will fight for them, who will stand up for them, who will be their champion, who will make sure that the hungry get fed and the sick have health care. So I thank you for your leadership. I'm honored to be here with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. We are so grateful not only for your comments today, but truly for your leadership. We were admonished by Speaker Mike Johnson this week to don't get lost in the facts. And we appreciate that you are setting forth the facts and the very real, cruel choice. This using hunger as a political weapon is a choice, and we thank you for your work. I'm also grateful to our steering and policy co-chairs, to my fellow members of leadership, and especially to my colleagues for being here. But it is you, the witnesses, that we are really, really grateful for helping us demonstrate just how much is at stake in this fight. And I am especially grateful for our next speaker, who can shine a light on what it means to be a mom in America right now. And we have a White House that really can't stop talking about birth rates in our country. Republicans who cannot for the life of them figure out why women aren't having more babies, while they gut Medicaid, close hospitals, dismantle Head Start, and take food off the table of families. Working women do not have the resources to become a mother, let alone be a mother. 35% of the counties in America don't have anywhere to give birth. Most Americans live in a child care desert. 60% of households can't afford a basic standard of living. And Republicans expect those families to give up more, to sacrifice more so that billionaires can get more. It is as hollow an agenda as it sounds, and it explains the backlash that we saw at the polls on Tuesday. We know where the American people stand, and Democrats are going to keep fighting for an economy where you can actually start, raise, and sustain a family. In the richest country to ever exist, that should not be too much to ask. So I thank everyone here for being in this fight to build that future. And our next speaker is the proud mom of 3, the founder and CEO of the Baby Stewart Foundation, Ashley Gooden Stewart. Ashley, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work and advocacy, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Ashley Gooden Stewart. I live in Lamarck, Texas, with my partner, our 3 young kids, ages 1, 6, and 8. I'm a certified grief coach, nonprofit founder, and a proud member of Moms Rising. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story today and all you and everything everyone is doing to fight for working families. I appreciate that. My family has struggled to make ends meet as the cost of essentials has risen dramatically, and our child care crisis has prevented me from working full time. The support Medicaid and WIC provide is critical for us, as it is for millions of other families. But now, this administration is refusing to fund these programs, putting our health and well-being at risk. I first joined Moms Rising because of my struggles as a working mom. In my experience, our economy is not set up to support working mothers. Here in the United States, working parents are forced to care for our families without the basic care policies people in other developed nations take for granted, like paid family and medical leave and quality, affordable child care. When my son was born in 2019, I was laid off from my job at a health insurance company where I'd worked for 3.5 years. Since then, I've struggled to maintain consistent employment because child care is not affordable or accessible. Where I live, child care programs cost hundreds of dollars per week, and most have long wait lists. The best solution for me was to do contract work, but that is seasonal, spotty, and unreliable. Sometimes my mom helps with child care so I can take on more hours, but she is a veteran with a disability and has limitations on what she can do. It's been a real struggle. Without my full-time income, my family has struggled to keep up with rising costs. As I said, WIC and Medicaid are critical for us. WIC helps me keep healthy food on the table that my kids need to grow and thrive. Eggs are expensive. Milk is expensive. Fresh produce is expensive. These days, it feels like everything in life is expensive. WIC helps fill in the gaps. The breastfeeding classes WIC provides are incredible, as are the classes on child development milestones and cooking healthy meals. Although I've been a mother for years, every child is different, and these resources are extremely helpful. But for so many families like mine, the government shutdown is causing an enormous amount of stress because WIC and SNAP are running out of funds, and this administration is refusing to use the contingency funds Congress approved to protect them. My family has also received SNAP benefits, and although we recently lost access, so many of the families in my community that I support through my nonprofit organization depend on the support SNAP provides. I was relieved when I saw this weekend that a judge ordered Trump to release SNAP funds, but I've also heard that families may only get partial SNAP benefits this month. That will be terribly harmful for families in my community and across the country. I'm also terrified because this summer, Republicans in Congress voted to slash nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid. Medicaid is a lifeline for us. It's the reason I had access to quality prenatal and postpartum care when each of my children were born. Medicaid enables us to take our kids to the doctor when they're sick and for all their routine checkups. My older daughter has asthma and severe allergies, and Medicaid helps us afford the medications and specialists she needs to stay healthy. I have no idea how we'll access care without it. It's devastating to me that any lawmaker would attack programs that would help working families like mine access health care while doling out big tax breaks for billionaires and giant corporations. The thought that any lawmaker prioritizes a billionaire's greed over my daughter's access to her asthma medication makes my stomach churn. I want to thank the members of this committee for fighting to protect Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. The cost of health care has skyrocketed, and these policies are more critical than ever. We need every single elected leader to sort out their priorities. That starts with funding Medicaid and the ACA, reopening the government, ensuring that there is no interruption to WIC and SNAP, and getting to work on the pressing issues that are holding families like mine back, including solving our child care crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dean, you're now recognized.
All right, discussion amongst elected Democratic officials about SNAP benefits, hearing testimony about how much of an impact this could have. We hear earlier from Governor Stein in North Carolina about Medicaid and potential cuts to health care funding. Just now about SNAP benefits. We hear about these things very regularly on Live Impact News. We know that for regular viewers, regular listeners, it could potentially get repetitive, but it's just that important. It is important because of the impacts it could have on people in communities, regardless of how we go about getting the needed benefits to those people who require them. Knowing that they need them is important, and hearing some of the actual boots on the ground perspectives on how important we feel like could be valuable. So that's why we want to try to find any live feed, interview, or press conference we can where we could potentially gain perspective on how important these programs are in actual communities. Because another thing we do often on Live Impact News is we hear from elected officials specifically about the big picture issues and the big picture arguments between Democrats and Republicans. So hearing the actual impacts is important. So we'll continue to try to do that here on this program. We're going to end the program the way we started the program, by giving an update in the Abby Zwerner case. A ruling this afternoon from the jury in favor of the plaintiff, Abby Zwerner, for $10 million. Zwerner brought a lawsuit against Newport News School District for $40 million after being shot in January of 2023 by a 6-year-old in her own classroom. She gets a judgment of $10 million after a ruling in favor of her in that civil trial. So that is how we will end the show today. Plenty more coverage coming up on 13 News Now at 4 p.m. I'll be speaking to a legal analyst about that case on 13 News Now at 4 p.m. So we hope you join us there. But if not, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Impact News. And we hope to see everybody for tomorrow, a Friday, I might add. Looking forward to seeing you all on Friday.